All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so sorry about starting a little late. We've had some technical difficulties, as some of you may have overheard. I just want to thank you all for sticking with us and joining the Working Families Party Assembly tonight, our monthly virtual membership meeting. We've got people calling in from all over the country today, so we're going to give people just a minute or two before we get started. And for those of you who are able to join by video this evening, it's great to see your faces. In just a moment, we are going to talk to some amazing candidates. But if you're on video, you'll see a chat box on the right side of the Zoom application. It could be on the bottom of the screen for some of you. Just go ahead and use that to say hello to each other from across the country. And while people are joining and introducing themselves, I'll take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Shawn Sebastian, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the call today from my home state of Iowa. You're probably hearing a lot about Iowa in the news lately, and Iowa swung from a 10-point Obama win in 2008 to a 10-point Trump win in 2018. We have the most Obama to Trump counties of any state here in Iowa, and Iowa can help beat Trump. The Iowa caucuses are just 99 days away, and the campaigns are all in full swing right now as 20 different presidential candidates blanket the state with millions of dollars and hundreds of staff. But the day after the caucuses, the campaigns pull up their stakes and leave, and there's no progressive infrastructure left behind. That's why I am so thrilled to work with WFP candidates like the two amazing young women from Iowa running for office, who you'll hear from shortly. These two young women are running to make change locally, and they're building durable coalitions of the multiracial working class. We're talking students, young people, and immigrants who conventional politics typically doesn't reach. Chelsea Chism-Vargas and Rachel Junck are building the power they need to win their races in November and the power that we need to win in 2020. And they're doing it door by door and conversation by conversation. So I'm going to take a minute to see some of these folks here. We've got Des Moines in the house. We've got Denver, Albuquerque, New Jersey, Utica. We've got people from all over. It's amazing. So I am just so excited to introduce our candidate for Des Moines City Council here, Chelsea Chism-Vargas. Chelsea Chism-Vargas is running to represent Ward 4 on the Des Moines City Council. If elected, Chelsea would be the first and only Latinx person ever elected to the Des Moines City Council and the first woman ever to represent her ward. Chelsea's organizing the most diverse ward in the city that has rapidly changed from a majority white neighborhood to one that's majority people of color. Chelsea's was also part of our Women Run Campaigns program. That's where I met her, which trains women to run campaigns as well as to run themselves for office. Chelsea and one of her staff, Janina, both attended our Des Moines training earlier this summer. Chelsea, thanks so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about more about you and your race?
Hey folks, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Perfect, cool. Hey everyone, yes, I am Chelsea Chism-Vargas. Super excited to be on this call with everyone from the Working Families Party. Yes, my race. Hey, so I'm running for Des Moines City Council, Ward 4, and I really first got linked up with Working Families Party, like Shawn mentioned, in the Women Runs campaign training, which was really incredible just because it really connected so many women from across the state of Iowa. It wasn't just Des Moines. Folks came in from across the state to learn all of these specific skills to run campaigns. And I remember one that I really valued is they gave us all these kind of weird scenarios and we had to find out the win number, which for sometimes a win number can be pretty easy to find out, but depending on if there's a special election or other things happening on the ballot, a win number can be really different. And that was just super helpful for me because they laid out a few, unique scenarios and we had to do some guessing. And that's really similar to what's going on in my campaign right now. The win number is really hard to determine. So it was just nice to have that background from the Women's Run campaign training, and again, to connect with women from all over the state. Because that's how we're really going to start building power, is recognizing other women and realizing that we all have these skills that we've learned from the same organization and put those to use. So that's a little bit about me, but more specifically about the ward. Ward 4 here in Des Moines is, like Shawn mentioned, now one of the most diverse wards in the city. And really traditionally, it's a ward for immigrants, right? Like originally it was an Italian immigrant ward, now really Latinos, but we're seeing so many Nepalese communities come in. So I'm just anticipating what the future of this ward will really look like. And I'm just excited that it's one where immigrants can come and be successful and grow their families. But we need more support. Just because, for example, one reason that I really decided to run, my family are all immigrants from Peru, and we all live in this area. But there was some graffiti that happened in my community over a year ago now, some racist anti-immigrant graffiti that said "deport illegals," just graffitied in the street. And my family was really worried that day. They were all just texting each other, making sure everyone was safe. And that just startled me, that my family was feeling unsafe in our own community. So I went ahead and I took the initiative, called my council member. That's what you should do, right? Called my council member and reached out and was like, hey, my family's worried. We all live in your ward. What's going to be done? Is this graffiti going to get cleaned up? Is this neighborhood going to get patrolled? Like, what is the follow-up going to be? Because folks in your community are scared. And my council member just responded and was like, well, your family's not illegal, are they? And I was like, excuse me? And from just that conversation, it really showed me that the representation that we do have is not one that's adequate. Our council member does not represent the diverse community that lives here in Ward 4. And we deserve adequate representation. We deserve someone who's going to fight for us and understands our families and our values. So besides that, it's also worth knowing that our current councilman doesn't even live in this ward. He uses his mom's address to run for office. So there's a lot of reasons that I decided to run, but really it was just because I care about my community and I care that we're being represented adequately and that we're getting everything that we deserve. Our opponent has put so much money into his campaign. Just when he started his reelection, he had about $47,000. And folks like my family, folks in my community, we don't have that kind of money. And hearing that number might really startle someone to run against him, and folks might think twice. But for someone like me, I just saw that number and I was like, okay, well, I know we're not going to raise that, but we got people power, and that's what we'll do. We'll fight big money with big organizing. And so that's really what we've done. As the opponent puts money into yard signs and he puts money into billboards, I've connected with organizations like the Working Families Party and built up just a diverse community of volunteers that represents the community that we're a part of, and we're hitting doors every chance we get. So our coalition is made up by diverse people who just care about these issues, and super proud to get the Working Families Party endorsement, but we also have endorsements from other organizations. Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, which is like the largest people-powered organization in the state. Their racial justice team has really stepped up to support us because we're definitely taking a strong stance in supporting a ban on racial profiling here in the city of Des Moines with Des Moines Police Department. It's really important that everyone in the community, especially in my ward, feel safe. And again, the opponent is like the #1 person that is against the racial profiling ban. It's like the story could not write itself. And then we also got endorsed by Democratic Socialists of America, and they've been working really hard on issues like housing. And we have an endorsement from Julian Castro's campaign, just because he sees the talent, the leadership, and in our campaign. So we have a lot of really awesome endorsements, and I work for Planned Parenthood. So a lot of folks from the reproductive rights background movements have came in and supported. So it's been awesome, y'all. We're really running a campaign that's true to our values and true to the people that we're hoping that we can give a voice to in this community. So people-powered campaign, and we're really building kind of new voters, especially here in Des Moines. A lot of these immigrant communities have never been reached out to for local elections. So showing them, you know, your vote matters so much because it's going to impact your family's day-to-day lives. And it's been awesome. It's really been awesome to see so many folks in the community come together. And I'm excited to win. Election Day is November 5th. We still have a lot of work to do till then. Still hitting the doors. I just got done hitting the doors earlier tonight, and we still have someone on the doors right now. So it's been awesome, and we're really looking forward to Election Day because we know we've run a campaign that's just people powered.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Next up, I'm going to introduce Rachel Junck, another trailblazing woman running for city council in Ames, Iowa. Rachel would be the youngest woman ever elected to public office in Iowa, ever. The Republican Party, and she's doing this in the midst of a Republican Party that is waging an aggressive voter suppression campaign against students in the state of Iowa. Rachel is organizing people who've never been contacted before and is literally building new maps of voters all by herself to capture whole new universes of students. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us more about your campaign.
Yeah, happy to be here. My name's Rachel Junck, and I'm an ISU student running for Ames City Council Ward 4. So I was born and raised right here in Ames, and I'm the daughter of 2 Ames public school teachers. After graduating from Ames High, I knew I wanted to stay in my hometown and go to ISU, which is home to 36,000 students, making up half the population of Ames. However, those 36,000 students in Ames are only represented on our city council by an ex officio member who has a voice but no vote. The makeup of Ward 4 that I'm running in is predominantly students. It's the residence halls on campus, fraternity and sorority housing, near campus apartments, as well as residential neighborhoods, but we aren't represented by a student on council. So to make things worse, the Iowa legislature has made it so much more difficult for students at ISU who come from out of state to get registered to vote. And with voter ID laws at the polls that exclude student IDs, this is definitely voter suppression. And we know that these laws disproportionately affect young people. So our campaign has been finding ways to make voting easier for students while navigating these voter ID laws for the first time. So that's really why we're running an unprecedented campaign. So historically, city council campaigns in Ames have stuck to lists of typical voters, stayed in the neighborhoods, not really reached out to students at all. But we're running 4 parallel campaigns. We have a campaign in the dorms, we have a campaign in apartments, we have a campaign in Greek housing, and in the neighborhoods. So we're really reaching out to everyone. We've been blind knocking on the doors of every single student apartment near campus. So that's over 850 doors, which is a demographic of voters that are politically invisible in Van because students move every single year. We've registered hundreds of new voters in Greek housing and the dorms, freshman students, and navigated the process of IDs with them. We've knocked on over 1,400 residential doors in the neighborhoods and are continuing to knock more and more each day. So we've really gotten a lot of students excited about voting in a local election and engaged in the process. You know, these people might never have thought about voting before, but now with them coming into contact with our campaign, they understand how important it is to give students a vote on the council and get involved with politics at all levels. While we might be a local city council campaign, we have a more robust student outreach program than most presidential campaigns that are in town. So this is our dorm captains, our Greek captains, and a network of volunteers of all ages that are committed to helping us build this momentum. So with our voter registration programs, we've been able to register 776 student voters, and among those, we have 606 students that have requested absentee ballots to make voting that much easier for students. For context, the person that won this election last time had 535 votes total. And in 2015, one of the precincts of Ward 4 where students lived had only 9 total votes cast. And so at our satellite voting location on campus last week, 66 students already voted, which might not be huge numbers to presidential campaigns, but are important to us because every single vote matters. So we've been reaching people where they're at, and through using Empower and the texting programs through the Working Families Party, we've really been able to accomplish that goal. We know that the work we're doing now is going to transfer over into 2020 with the caucuses and the state and presidential elections. So these newly registered voters will have the opportunity to vote out Steve King, a race that was within 10,000 votes in 2018. And in 2020, ISU students can vote him out, as well as Joni Ernst in the Senate. So our campaign's not only committed to representation, but also climate change. While numerous other cities around Iowa have committed to climate action plans and being carbon neutral, Ames is behind that curve. So it's going to take my generation of leaders to fight for our future, not incumbents that aren't quite there yet, to take the steps we need to confront the climate crisis. We also care about promoting tenants' rights and affordable housing for all in Ames, issues that have plagued students and lower income residents for ages, but haven't been addressed on the city council. So if elected, I would be the youngest woman ever elected to public office in Iowa, but that's not why I'm running. I'm running to represent students, address the housing crisis, and tackle climate change. So being endorsed by the Working Families Party has been so important to my campaign, where we're building a new electorate of student voters, and let's continue this momentum in 2019, November 5th, and 2020. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's so great to hear from you. And thank you all so much for this, allowing us this message from Iowa from Chelsea and Rachel. We're about ready to hear from WFP Executive Director Mo Mitchell. And I just wanted to say that as with all of our assemblies, this is a guided conversation led by WFP staff. At the end, we'll have breakout groups of 10 to 20 people for you to meet other members. You'll be asked to introduce yourself and share some reflections on what you heard. And we do have a few ground rules. The WFP Assembly is an organizing call. There's room for people here with lots of different views, but we want this space to be where people can be in community with each other. Anyone who engages in harassment or abusive behavior will be removed from the call by our moderators. So please treat each other with kindness, respect, and dignity that we all deserve. And without any further ado, let me introduce Maurice Mitchell, Working Families Party National Director.
Thanks, Shawn. And Chelsea and Rachel, thank you so much for your stories. Just really, really inspiring. And we're so proud to endorse and support you both. And we're very excited about everything that's happening in Iowa. So the Constitution begins with the words, "We the people." But the people who wrote it didn't have in mind people like me. The prosperity of this new nation depended on chattel slavery. Most of my family comes from the Caribbean island of Trinidad. When the British conquered the island from the Spanish in 1797, it had 18,000 people on it. 10,000 of those people were enslaved Africans who toiled on sugar plantations under unspeakable conditions. When the Constitution was ratified, about 1 in 5 Americans were enslaved people of African descent. Of the 55 men at the Constitutional Convention, half were enslavers. The new federal government had limited powers at first, but one was the power to apprehend enslaved people who had escaped and return them to their enslavers. The Constitution also counted slaves as 3/5 of a person to give slave states more representation in Congress, even though enslaved people had 0/5 of the rights promised to white citizens. The Constitution was written by and for enslavers. They were terrified that the people that they enslaved might escape or rebel. But they were also afraid of poor white people. Immediately after the Revolutionary War, the United States was racked by uprisings of poor white folks who had risked life and limb to fight the British, only to see their debts mount and creditors seize their lands. James Madison, the Constitution's mastermind, concluded that the Constitution needed to prevent the poor from gaining power. The great counter-majoritarian institution that Madison devised was the US Senate, which in his own words was meant to, and I quote, "protect the minority of the opulent against the majority." Senators were chosen by their state legislatures, not voters, until the early 20th century. Many states only allowed their wealthiest citizens to serve in the Senate. Fast forward to today, the Senate has become an instrument of minority rule in a new way. In 1790, the most populous state, Virginia, 13 times as many people as the least populous state. Today, California, with almost 40 million people, has 69 times as many inhabitants as Wyoming, with fewer than 600,000 people. The US Senate today gives vastly disproportionate representation to rural, predominantly white states. This creates a Republican advantage. The 54 senators who voted for Neil Gorsuch's confirmation represented only 45% of the population. Speaking of the Senate's power over judicial nominees, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans blocked the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice nominated by Barack Obama, and then rammed through confirmations for far-right Judge Neil Gorsuch and the far-right alleged sexual assaulter Brett Kavanaugh. In fact, 4 of the 5 right-wing justices on the Supreme Court were nominated by Republican presidents, Bush and Trump, who were elected despite losing the popular vote, but won the electoral vote. Yet another counter-majoritarian relic of the Constitution. Now, the most right-wing Supreme Court in a century is ready to accelerate the rollback of women's rights, LGBT rights, voting rights, labor rights, environmental regulations, campaign finance rules, every issue that gives power and autonomy to anyone outside a small group of wealthy white men. Based on what we know of our nation's origins, you can see how that might happen. The presidential race takes up a lot of oxygen with good reason, but it seems to me that we might not be spending enough time thinking about the US Senate. To take the majority away from Republicans, we must defend a difficult seat in Alabama, beat incumbent Republicans in places like Colorado, North Carolina, and Arizona, and possibly win an open seat in Georgia. Even if we win, Democrats may be so scared of losing that they might resist most of the transformative agenda that our next president could bring to Washington. So what is the unique role of the Working Families Party and our allies in this situation? First of all, any hope of victory on our issues requires ending Republican control of the Senate. That means supporting Democratic nominees in competitive states, even if, as seems likely, some of those nominees don't share many of our convictions. Whatever we do, we have to work on behalf of Senate candidates. However, we'll work to build durable infrastructure to help shift those states' politics in our direction over the long term. So there's the short-term intervention, but then there's the long-term change that we have to do, knowing that some of these folks don't line up with our values. Just as importantly, however, WFP has a role to play in ensuring that Democrats who represent more Democratic states are champions for the multiracial working class. We know that at present, this is far from the case. Many Senate Democrats are either enthusiastic fundraisers from Wall Street and Silicon Valley, and they have rewarded those industries with lax regulation. So we could do much, much, much better. And we have to do a whole lot better if we want to shift from defense to offense. If we want to enact transformative changes like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, free college, and more, we have to demand better. That's why WFP is thrilled to support Maggie Toulouse-Oliver for the open US Senate seat in New Mexico. Maggie has been a strong progressive Secretary of State, helping to champion dramatic expansions of voter rights in New Mexico. She's running against former DCCC leader Ben Ray Lujan in the Democratic primary. We couldn't be more proud to stand with Maggie. She's the kind of working families champion we don't have enough of in the US Senate. And you'll hear from her directly right after this message. And I'm so honored tonight to introduce Maggie, who, if she's elected, will be truly our first working families Democrat in the US Senate. She's running again on a platform of equal pay, a Green New Deal, and strengthening voting rights. And she's a model for the kind of progressive champions we need in the Senate. Maggie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to get right to it and just ask a question.
Great.
Okay, let's get into it. All right. So New Mexico has never in its history elected a woman to the US Senate. Why do you think the time is right for that finally to happen, and what does it mean?
First of all, Mo, thank you so much for all of your amazing words just now. And thanks all of you for having me on the call. And I just want to give a shout out to Chelsea and Rachel. You guys are amazing. Keep it up. I'm really inspired by both of you. So thank you. So to answer your question, Mo, the time is well past, right? This nation is in its 243rd year. I know that because I was born in the bicentennial in 1976. And New Mexico has been a state since 1912, and while we've done a lot of progressive work over the years, sending great voices from New Mexico, in fact, we were the first state to send a Latino to the United States Senate. At the end of the day, we've never sent a woman, and it is well past time, and especially this year in light of the war on women and women's reproductive rights that has been happening since the inception of the Trump administration, it's more important than ever.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And I couldn't agree more. I have a few more questions for you while we have you, Maggie. Your campaign is the only one in New Mexico this cycle to unionize.
Yeah.
It's important to you that your campaign staff have union representation, and what role do you see unions playing in the economy overall?
So I think right now in this country, one of the things that is bringing previously unengaged folks to the table is the greater realization that we are all having that economic inequality is one of the biggest issues of our time, and it is one of the biggest problems that we need to overcome as a society. And in my view, the work that's been done over the last 30 plus years to really decimate our labor unions in this country has contributed to that significantly. When people feel free to come together in their workplace and to organize and to collectively bargain for pay, for working conditions, for benefits, then that gives us collectively as a greater society the ability to continue to grow and support the working class and the middle class of our society. Instead, there has been an absolute attack on unions and labor and working people, particularly over the last 30 years, especially with the emergence of so-called right-to-work states, the ability for governments at all levels to really wage an attack on the ability of people to come together and collectively bargain. So because I hold those values and because I believe so strongly in the need to strengthen unions in this country, I felt like it was important to live those values and to walk the walk on those values within the context of my own campaign for Senate. I also worked on campaigns for 13 years before I became an elected official. And I knew that it was really hard for me personally to work so many hours, to not have the ability to take time off, paid time off, to not have health insurance or sick leave, or any of the opportunities that we can provide through a union shop to my employees now. I lived the experience of not having those opportunities myself. And so again, it's really important for me when I see a problem and when I want to represent the issue authentically, to be walking the walk on that issue.
Great, thanks. And thank you so much for walking the walk. It's, from our perspective, without reinvigorating organized labor, there's no way that we could achieve all the goals that we want for our society. Working people need to lead and organize. So another question for you, we have two more. The Senate is one of the least democratic institutions in our democracy. How will you work as a U.S. Senator to ensure that the Senate represents working people?
And I think that in your sermon, you really kind of talked about that. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that so much of the potential good public policy that's waiting in the wings right now, that the House has passed, is literally sitting and waiting to die in the U.S. Senate right now. The U.S. Senate has become a total rubber stamp for the Trump administration. It has become a pass-through for everything bad that Donald Trump can think of, and it has become a complete full stop for any good policy that could potentially come through. And this is a huge problem, and it's a problem because right now we have a quite frankly, Republicans who are a minority in this country in leadership in the Senate, and they led by Mitch McConnell, are making all of the decisions. They have completely eradicated so many Senate rules and norms over the years that existed to protect the minority party in the Senate. We can't even get issues called up for a vote or even a debate on the Senate floor to be discussed. The filibuster has been completely turned into something unrecognizable, right? In the past, if you wanted to prevent an issue for coming up for a vote, or if you wanted to make sure that you put a stop to something, then what you would do is you would stand on the Senate floor and you would hold the floor for as long as it took. And if that meant that you had to finally get off your topic and start reading sections of the Bible or cookbooks or what have you to hold the floor, you did that. Nowadays, you can be basking in the sun at Trump's resort in Florida and simply place a phone call or send a text and say, I'm placing a hold on this vote. I'm intending to conduct a filibuster, and that brings it to a screeching halt. This is incredibly undemocratic. It's not what our founders envisioned. So it really takes electing people to the Senate who understand how fundamentally undemocratic it has become and who are willing to shake things up and use their voice, and not only use their voice, but take our voice to the people and begin demanding that the Senate become accountable to us, that the Senate begin to call up for a vote and call up for debate and discussion so many of these important issues that are really just lingering, whether it be immigration reform, the Equality Act, HR 1, the For the People Act, which would create countrywide standards for allowing ballot access and equality in regard to the voting environment. These are all really important things that are never going to see the light of day under the current leadership in the Senate. And unless people are really willing to stand up and call that out and do it in a way that reaches the people and holds these people accountable, we are never going to see change.
Great, thank you so much. Couldn't agree with you more again. I mean, that's why I endorsed you, because we're so deeply aligned. I'm
incredibly honored.
For sure. And so we just, Maggie, we have one last question. We want to thank you so much for taking the time from the campaign to join us. And we ask all of our guests this question: will you join today officially as a paid member of the Working Families Party?
Yes. Wait a minute, what are the dues? Just kidding. No, no, I'd be proud to, and it would be my honor. I so believe in the values and the work of the Working Families Party. I am so honored to have been endorsed, and it would make me so happy to officially be a member of the Working Families Party.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maggie. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to support Maggie's campaign, you could contribute to her and our other candidates on the call by going to wfpus.org/donate1027. That's wfpus.org/donate1027. If you're using the app, you'll see the link in your chat box. And I just want to thank all three candidates. I think it's a part of our special sauce that we focus on every level of government. And we build a pipeline of progressive leaders that will transform our country. So I just want to thank all of you. So every month, we also take the opportunity to highlight a new WFP member from somewhere in the country. I'm excited to introduce Valerie Romero, joining us from New Mexico. So welcome, Valerie. Can you introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to join WFP?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I just really want to clarify, all due respect, but I believe our Constitution was written by people that were fleeing treason. And so that's a big part of how our Bill of Rights came to pass and how we as the people came into the picture of the democracy. So that's just like a prehistorical context. There's a lot more to it. And so I just want to represent as a Southwest Chicana First Nations people that I'm really grateful to be on this call. So my name is Valerie Romero. I am the owner and founder of Behavioral is Not Mental Health, and I'm a new member of the Working Families Party, a grateful member. I'm so pleased to be able to speak to all of you today about what being a WFP member means to me and the great work the WFP is doing in New Mexico. I got involved in the WFP through social media through Ana Moran. So I'm part of a leadership initiative, Lifelong Leaders, NSLS, PTK. These initiatives were student initiatives that we utilized to get the attention of student government, to get the attention of our locals, our officials, our presidential candidates, and other candidates involved in helping to promote the wellness and health and well-being of our people. I also want to point out that I have PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm part of a fostered initiative in regard to what it means to overcome our downfalls and to achieve greatness, no matter what path of life we walk through. In New Mexico, WFP has been a powerful voice for our communities. It has won real results, whether it is helping raise the minimum wage or automatic voter registration in the state legislature, or winning public financing of elections in Albuquerque. Now our focus is on the upcoming November 5th elections. Early voting was from October 19th to November 2nd. So we've been out here hitting the ground running, you know, walking, pacing ourselves, going up 2 and 3 flights of stairs to promote what this democracy means to us as the people that are leading some of these movements, and helping to guide and lead the youth in a direction that is positive and productive, and brings a different kind of dignified respect of who we are in our communities and what it means to be part of our four corners, that has a guiding light as a northern voice. So it's part of the bigger picture of the strategies that bring us and bind us together. I'm so proud to be part of this multiracial, multicultural movement that's making real change. It's an honor to be in community with such an empowered and inspiring group of hardworking people. Together, we are fighting for solutions to the world's most urgent problems and lifting up millions of people. And if we keep fighting, I believe that we shall rise like the wings of eagles and transform our world. Thank you again for allowing me to share this space as a new member of the WFP, and for your continued support of all we are doing in New Mexico. And I say this with the utmost solidarity and respect, but I really want to shed light on La Conquista, because what that sheds upon our freedom is that we are liberated and that we are free to be who we are. Expression of speech, expression of our freedoms. Our Constitution were defining principles, not just recommendations. Those were principles of how we were liberated to be free, to be who we are. So I'm really grateful to these candidates running for office. I'm really happy to be part of WFP and to be one of these people in the front lines knocking on these doors, empowering our local people to have their voice in the campaigns, in the picture, and to get their voice to the polls. So November 2nd, and then again, November 5th is election day. So thank you, everybody. God bless you. And thank you for highlighting me as a focus of leadership, because I'm really honored and really, really grateful again as a New Mexican citizen to have been born and bred into the USA. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Valerie. It's wonderful to hear about the great work WFP members are doing all over the country, and especially what's happening in New Mexico right now. It's nothing short of inspiring. And it makes it so clear the moral mandate all of us have to ensure a nation that is just and kind and gives all the ability to thrive, no matter where you're from or what you believe, what you look like or who you love, or how much money your parents have, for example. And I'm so glad people like Valerie and so many of us on this call are taking that mandate seriously. The one way you can build that nation together is through getting organized. At the WFP, we depend on each other. We depend on our smarts, our creativity, our time, our money. And that's why I'm going to remind you all to sign up as a WFP member. If you believe in this movement, we need you to be an active part of it. If you've never officially joined and paid dues before, it's very easy. You can just text member to 738-674. So you can just text the word member to 738-674 on your phone. It'll take you directly to a page where you could sign up for, and pay the amount of dues that makes sense to you. Also, you could click on the link in the chat box if you're using the app right now. So either click on the link on the chat box or text member to 738-674, and you can become a member right now. And again, it's through our grassroots membership that we build a mighty movement, a grassroots movement of everyday people coming together to build the power in order to transform our democracy. So I'll just give everybody just a little minute if you're trying to sign up. You could do that now. If you're currently a member and you want to bump up, you could also do that. So if you're currently giving $5, but you want to bump up to $7 or $10 or anything else like that, you could also do that. And that's just a way of reaffirming your commitment. So anybody who's given and is a sustaining member now, I just want to thank you so much for your contribution. Anybody who's been a sustaining member, we thank you so much. This is how you build people power. And just want to thank you for building this community with your ingenuity and your compassion and your testimony and your treasure. So thank you so very much. Okay. Thank you all again. And I just want to shift gears a little bit now. We're going to break out into groups for a few moments to reflect on how we could together address some of our greatest challenges. Tonight's break will last about 10 minutes. And again, these breakout groups allow us to actually build community across difference, across racial, ethnic, gender, and regional boundaries. You'll be matched with people all over the country. And it's an opportunity for us to get to know one another. Just in a few seconds, we're gonna break out, and the breakout will last again for 10 minutes. So the breakouts will begin. Just get ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I can't tell you how much I enjoy these breakout groups. And I wanna be clear about why we do these assemblies. We're trying to build a community. We're trying to build the party experience that so many of us desire, but has never really been invested in because the traditional party structures are extractive. And we understand that the power of community is a source of our greatest power. And so these breakouts are just a little opportunity for us to begin to build that muscle, to work together across difference. And I could tell you, talking to, it was Monique from Connecticut. I was really inspired by her. And the fact that Monique, you've been voting on the Working Families Party line in Connecticut for a while, but it was the interaction of somebody, maybe a canvasser, who invited you to a town hall. And now here you are in the assembly. And this is a space where folks just like you, everyday people, could come together and do politics together. I'm so inspired to know that you're here and that the work that we're doing is bringing people like you, Monique, together in order to do politics across every barrier that a lot of folks in the political establishment tell us are barriers that divide us. But these barriers are bringing us together, and we're leaning in curiosity to learn about one another across difference. So that's so exciting. So tonight, this was our 7th WFP Assembly. I think every month they get a little better and better. What we're doing is using the space to begin to build a community together, and I'm so grateful to you all for being a part of it. We close every month with something I'm borrowing from my siblings in the movement for Black Lives. In just a moment, we're going to unmute everyone's line. Everybody's line is gonna be unmuted. And so everyone could say goodnight together. And you don't need to say the words goodnight. You could sing, you could do a chant, you could do whatever you wanna do in order to express that energy. And we're all gonna hear the voices of all of us rising in a cacophony. So get ready to say goodnight together. We'll unmute all the lines for a few moments, and then the call is over. We are muting in 3, 2, 1, unmute.
Good night. This is great. I'm excited.
Watch the Senate.
Go, Pat, go.
Solidarity.
Thank you.
Bye.